I don't think you're probably born that way.
I think that it's not really a choice. I think there is a biological component to their sexuality.
My own personal belief is that homosexuality is a sin.
I think that if the person feels that if they want to do that, then that's just...
You're not really born with it. I think it's just a sinful way, kind of a sinful nature that you attain.
No, I think they're born that way, and they discover that as they become older, just like regular people discover themselves.
I believe that I was born gay, and I believe that anyone who even struggled with the idea that they might be gay, I believe they were just in the process of coming to terms with their inborn homosexuality.
Well, I believe that homosexuality is not something that you're born with. It's a choice that you make.
No, I don't believe so. I think they're born one way and stay that way. If you're homosexual, you're homosexual. I don't think that you can change that one way or the other.
I think if you're born that way, I don't think you can make a heterosexual gay, so I don't think you can make a homosexual straight.
They just might have these feelings ever since they were little kids. Who's really to say? I'm not an expert on it. I'm not a doctor, so that's just my opinion.
To limit your choices to a gay identity is what will certainly, keep you from finding other sides of yourself.
I believe people can change sexual orientation because I know personally people that have done so.
I discovered that I had heterosexual feelings. Sounded shocking from somebody who was so devout in their beliefs of homosexuality being such a true part of them. Can I tell you how I discovered my heterosexuality?
Is sexual preference a matter of inheritance? Are we born to become gay or straight? Or does our environment play a role in shaping our sexual feelings? These questions cut to the core of human experience. Such questions are not simply academic matters. Some of the most difficult and controversial issues facing our culture involve changing beliefs and feelings about sexuality. No topic is more controversial and thought-provoking. Specifically, in modern times, our views of homosexuality are relevant to nearly all areas of life, from religion to public policy on marriage.
As Ohioans, in the state of Ohio, we're not going to recognize marriages or any other legal definitions that would constitute the benefits of marriage for same-sex couples.
Like many citizens, some policymakers view homosexual feelings as an inborn, perhaps even God-given, aspect of humanity, requiring changes in public policy to be fair.
Frankly, from a personal point of view, my reading of my own Bible and my understanding of what God wants us to do, and God recognizing all people, this is just antithetical to that as far as I'm concerned.
Also, adopting the point of view that sexual feelings are inborn and fixed, most professional mental health associations have discouraged people with homosexual feelings from attempting to change those feelings. And yet there are some people that believe they have changed from gay to straight. They believe change results from factors such as religious belief and counseling assistance.
I had entered seminary, and it was my first year of seminary, and it was the second year of this relationship towards the end of it. And I was very depressed and very devastated, and I ended up confessing to a friend where I was at and what I was doing and how long this has been going on. It's been 10 years and of actually acting on things. And she was a fellow believer, and I told her in the car, and she just stopped in the middle of the highway and looked at me and said, "This is not who you are." And all I could think was, but it feels like it is. This feels like it's who I am. And but I knew that statement was very pivotal for me, because I knew if change was going to happen, that I had to believe that it wasn't who I was.
I had been lesbian for 10 years, ages 13 to 23. And of course, I didn't want to talk about that. I married Ron and had definitely changed.
But is change in sexual feelings really possible? Many mental health organizations say that sexual orientation is an inborn trait, like height or color, and therefore unlikely to change. However, a growing number of counselors and researchers are listening to people who say they have changed and are now rethinking the causes of sexual orientation.
My take on it is that it's a combination of both nature and nurture that contributes to sexual orientation. Certainly, throughout the 1990s and even into this century, we've seen a push to establish a biological basis for sexual orientation. And in a sense, by doing that, we've neglected any of the environment and those kinds of factors in contributing to sexual orientation.
The idea that homosexuality is hardwired via one's genetic makeup is one of the more popular misconceptions about homosexuality. Let me quote from the American Psychiatric Association's fact sheet on sexual orientation. Some people believe that sexual orientation is innate and fixed. However, sexual orientation develops across a person's lifetime. To date, there are no replicated scientific studies supporting any specific biological etiology, meaning cause, for homosexuality. Similarly, no specific psychosocial or life circumstances or family dynamic cause for homosexuality has been identified. Thus, the cause of homosexuality is something of a scientific mystery. However, the conventional wisdom that people are born gay is just not consistent with the research we have. What is more likely the case is that homosexual attractions are caused by different factors for different people. We have known for a long time that sexual feelings and behavior are highly responsive to environmental circumstances. Given the incredible variability of sexual customs and expressions the world over, it seems very likely that the object of one's sexual attractions are quite responsive to one's upbringing, one's sexual education and experience, one's values and beliefs, and the culture one grows up in.
Very significant change was understanding the factors or the environmental factors that did shape me, that are significant to why I made the choices I did.
Well, in this book, following that, they started describing, and it's funny because there was chapters about heterosexuality, and then there was like a small paragraph following that, and that paragraph said, you know, once in a while there's someone who doesn't have that feeling of being attracted to the opposite sex, but instead has a feeling of being attracted to the same sex, and that's known as homosexuality. That was in the book. That was the first time, and I can remember it just like it just happened, yesterday, seeing that word and thinking that that was me. It was kind of by process of elimination. You don't fit in here. You don't fit in here. You must fit in here. This must be it. And the book ends. And it's not like there were any other options in the book. I couldn't turn to another chapter and say, oh, there's another option. No. You choose within the options given you, and here they are. And so, at least that's how I saw it. I think for me, books were a huge authority. And I thought, these people know everything. And so I looked and I said, okay, no, okay, this is me.
If sexual attractions are not genetically determined, then how do they develop? According to psychologist Mark Yarhouse of Regent University, there are events that often go along with the development of same-sex feelings.
And typically, that begins with early awareness around age 10 or so of feeling different than other people, this sense of confusion about that, or it's a dilemma. Here I am experiencing same-sex attractions in a society that is predominantly heterosexual. And then they go into an experience of same-sex behavior early on, tends to be around age 13 or so on average. and then into an experience of labeling that behavior and that sense of confusion as an identity privately to themselves. I must be gay, or I must be lesbian. And then the next stage would be, or milestone event would be, disclosure to someone else. And typically that happens within one's peer group, finding a safe group of others to disclose one's experiences of attraction, and then perhaps to one's siblings, and eventually to one's parents.
But I was definitely different from my peers. I was very opposite of that as a child. I was very hyper, very loud, very into sports, loved being outside, played with action figures, didn't fit in the stereotype. And I knew that at a young age as well, that I was different from the other girls. But I knew the feelings I had were different from my other friends that I had that were females. It wasn't until the age 7, though, that I began a fantasy life of kind of entertaining those crushes that I had on women. And it was more fantasizing, wanting attention and the maternal care that women gave. I was very drawn to that. And I think age 10 is when I began sexualizing them. And as soon as I did that, I realized what I was doing, and realized that those were homosexual fantasies and crushes I had since I was little. And I felt very overwhelmed by that, but also very trapped.
I remember asking Dad, he was about ready to throw one of his fits, which he would always go into fits of rage. I remember asking him, I said, "You hate me, don't you?" And he came back, he said, "Yes, taking the Lord's name in vain, I hate you," and laughed. And that wasn't necessarily a kick. He was like, "Yeah, I knew that. I already knew that." So I grew up, having thought that already. And then at age 10, I was introduced to sex by a boy across the street. And even though I knew it was wrong, but at the same time, it was good to have positive male affection. Somebody wanted me for me.
And the ones that were really popular were the, football team, basketball team, and they just had these strengths that they were other to me. They were different. And so I developed this curiosity, and I thought, wow, what's all that about? And the more I thought about it, the more different I felt. And when puberty came along and bodies started changing, I really noticed other men. I wasn't very athletic, and so I was a little overweight. And the male body just looked very different to me. It looked different from mine. I didn't feel like I owned the same thing that I saw in other men. The way I discovered homosexuality was I went to the public library. My parents were very conservative, so they never told me anything about sex. I never even had the talk. We never had it at all. And I found a book, and I remember opening the book, and this was way back when, I don't know, it was like a 70s book, had pictures of men and women naked. And instead of being attracted to or curious about the page that had the women, I looked at the men. That whole feeling of otherness and difference just really stood out when I looked at these pictures of men. And just right then, my curiosity crossed over from being a curiosity about, the strengths that I saw in these guys who were on the football team and the basketball team, to being a curiosity about the male body. And that really, that began an involvement with pornography right from that point. But also what it did is it affirmed in me this desire for the masculine and to connect with men. And so in my mind began this idea that I could connect with men sexually, even though I really couldn't connect with them socially very well. I didn't have the skills. So my gay story started then. It started in high school when I was a young man who was very much different from other young men, felt he was on the outside looking in, and discovered a way to connect with them emotionally through fantasy, just thinking about them and thinking about being near them, and sexualizing that, and that was a way for me to resolve that need to connect with this group of men.
And then developmentally tend to move into a relationship. So they may have had same-sex behavior early on. They may later label themselves privately and then publicly, and then they pursue more of an ongoing relationship with someone of the same sex.
The girl that I was relating to for those 10 years, we made a marriage vow.
And that relationship lasted for several years. So I lived a double life, trying to live a Christian life, wanting so much, had such a heart for the Lord, wanted to serve Him, wanted to do the right things, but at the same time, too, had this conflict.
My first relationship began when I was 13, and I was going to a Christian high school at the time, and with 2 years at that high school, towards the end of the second year, our relationship became more out there. We were trying to cover it because clearly we were at a Christian school and that was viewed as wrong. And the school got wind of our relationship by some eyewitness accounts of being too close for comfort on campus. And because of that, we were both kicked out of the school. My first relationship was 8 years long. It was all through high school and all through college.
Not everyone develops attractions for the same sex in the same way. Environmental differences and childhood events can also lead to different pathways to same-sex attraction.
Yes, I was 21 then. I was living with a woman. I had moved in with her when I was 19, and we were just friends at that time. There was no sexual relationship then. And I started developing feelings for her and just for same-sex attractions in general.
When this girl approached me to kiss me, my mother was at work and we were at home alone together. I had really two reactions, one right on the heels of the other. First was revulsion when she kissed me, then attraction.
So the way I would really think about this conceptually is that there is a weighted interaction of many different factors, meaning that factors like genetics or prenatal hormonal mechanisms or parent-child relationships or childhood sexual abuse or disinhibition about sexual relationships.
Because the factors involved in creating sexual feelings are complex and individual, many people in our society mistakenly look for simple categories and simple explanations.
So what I tend to do is I make a three-tier distinction between experiences of same-sex attraction, a homosexual orientation, and a gay identity. And what happens in our culture today is that these three things that ought to be distinct are collapsed into one thing, so that experiences of same-sex attraction are automatically taken to mean the person is gay. And all they've got to do is realize that and come to accept who they really are as a person.
There's such a huge drive to define yourself when you're growing up, and especially when you're around, 13, 14, 15. You really want to know who you are, and you want to be sure of that. And it's almost like life or death, And look around you, and everyone seems to have a little assuredness where they know where they belong. I know. I'm a cheerleader. I'm a football player. I'm, the straight A student. And everyone, finds they solidify their identity. And I was dying for that. I needed that.
They have the experiences of same-sex attraction, but they have to make meaning out of what those attractions signal about them as a person. So in comparison, the people who later integrate those into a gay identity say, this signals who I truly am. The group who disidentifies tends to say, there's something wrong about me or something different about me, or this is a passing phase was a common thing that we saw in our research. They did not tend to say, these signal who I truly am as a person.
I started really looking at homosexuality being a term I could identify with. And I started reading more about it and reading about stories of others who had gone before me and had adopted a gay identity.
I do believe that you can have same-sex attraction and not identify yourself as a lesbian, because lesbianism is, or saying I'm a lesbian is just a label on a behavior, and same-sex attractions or my temptations or my struggles don't define who I am.
Even if people develop same-sex attractions through many different life experiences, there remains an open question about whether or not those attractions are changeable. As we have seen, many people think of these feelings as being a major part of their identity. Can change in these feelings and attractions happen once they are established?
Well, within the mental health profession, there's almost a unanimous consensus that homosexual orientation is pretty fixed. And that when you hear of a person who says that they were gay and they become ex-gay, that if you really interview them, they will acknowledge that the change is really in the way they view themselves, but their actual feelings and fantasies have not really changed. And that's the commonly accepted view, and I kind of accepted that view.
Clearly, the idea of change is controversial. One highly esteemed psychiatrist that now believes change is possible was once skeptical about the possibility that people could reorient their sexual feelings. Dr. Robert Spitzer of Columbia University recently conducted research to address the question of sexual orientation change from gay to straight. Dr. Spitzer is well known in the mental health community for his involvement in the American Psychiatric Association's decision to drop homosexuality from its list of mental disorders in 1973.
And I had an interesting experience. I was at the American Psychiatric Association annual meeting several years ago, and it was picketed by a group of people who were ex-gay, and they were very unhappy with the American Psychiatric Association. And I started talking to one of them, and he told me how he had changed. He was a very religious person, and religion had an important part of his change. And it occurred to me, gee, could it really be that it was not as fixed as everybody thought?
Dr. Spitzer became quite curious about sexual orientation change and decided to explore the issue further.
In the meantime, I decided I could do a study of it. My own research work is in structured interviews and assessment, so I thought it was something that I could do.
Dr. Spitzer contacted several mental health professionals who believed change was possible in order to enlist participants for the study. He remained cautiously skeptical.
But as soon as I spoke to a few of the people, it seemed pretty obvious to me that these were people who gave a very credible story of how they had changed. So the real purpose was to see whether it was true that essentially no one could change. Now, it was not a study of how often people can make that change, but it was a study of whether there are some people who can make a change in more than just how they view themselves, but also in their fantasy and their arousal.
When asked, Dr. Spitzer's research participants disclosed their frustration with the mental health professions.
That's another interesting thing. Many of the subjects reported that they had gone to mental health professionals and were told, just, accept it, there's no way to change. And they were not satisfied with that and were very depressed, thinking that they could not, change.
At the time, I was looking for somebody to tell me that I didn't have to go down that road, that there was hope in resolving my feelings. And but later on, this was before I actually was in any kind of homosexual relationship. This is when I was struggling with feelings still. And I just accepted what they told me and just really thought I was born that way and there was no hope otherwise.
The majority of subjects reported moderate to severe depression before they were into therapy, and a marked change. Very few were depressed when we saw them.
So with the growing evidence of the benefit of counseling for those seeking change, will the mental health professions reevaluate their official skepticism toward those who view themselves as ex-gay? Dr. Spitzer is not optimistic.
Well, I think they should. They will not be. It's not going to happen. In the near future, there's no way it's going to happen. I think the only issue is whether it goes beyond the position statements, whether they go to, saying it's an ethical violation to do this kind of therapy. But those position statements are not going to change. There's a gay activist group that's very strong and very vocal and recognized officially by the American Psychiatric Association. There's nobody to give the other viewpoint. There may be a few people who believe it, but they don't talk. Now, I do have to say that one of the concerns that people who have criticized, the study's been criticized severely by many people, particularly gay activists who apparently feel many quite threatened by it. I think they have the feeling that in order for them to get their civil rights, it's helpful to them if they can present the view that once you're homosexual, it can never change, which they may be right, that politically it does help them, but it may not be scientifically correct.
It is this tension between gay political objectives and the reality of change that creates the intense controversy surrounding people who change from gay to straight. For those who accept traditional faith teaching concerning sexual matters, this tension can feel like a disrespect of their faith and a denial of their existence.
One thing I should make clear is that there is this sort of claim being made today that if you live in a way that's consistent with your beliefs and values as a Christian, meaning you choose not to act on the attractions that you have, that somehow that will be intrinsically harmful to you as a person. And the research that I've seen just doesn't bear that out. It seems to me, as I look at this research, it comes down to congruence. Are you living your life in a way that's consistent with your beliefs and values? And so if your beliefs and values are that you believe God's saying not to act on the attractions that you have towards the same sex, that it seems to me that then acting on those is going to be more problematic for you than not acting on them.
I never believed that homosexuality was right, and so change began with that belief that it was wrong and it was changeable, and admitting that I was living a very self-focused life and just living to meet my desires at all times, and it was always about me.
And so I began to look at the research literature on sexual orientation and found that there were studies of people who had changed their sexual feelings, and that there were documented cases in the literature, in the scientific literature, of people who had changed from completely homosexual to completely heterosexual. And I have to say, it's really a sad situation when a professional body will tell people that have made tremendous changes in their lives that they don't exist, that those changes aren't valid, that they're in some way deceiving themselves. And I think that it ignores the very real situation that many people feel who consider themselves former homosexuals when professional bodies don't take them seriously.
One such person is Noe Gutierrez. He remembers well when he came out as a gay man.
I was very angry when I came out. I came out of the closet. I was very angry. I was angry about how long I had felt isolated and unaccepted and different, and now I felt empowered by knowing, I belong to some class of people.
After coming out to family, Noe began to become more comfortable with his identification as a gay man.
And I guess I started really shaping my life around the decision that I had made to adopt a gay identity until it became my entire life. From the people I talked to the things I believed in, to the books I read, to the music I listened to the things I liked. Suddenly my tastes were being changed. I liked certain actors and actresses. I didn't like other actors and actresses. I liked certain movies. I didn't like certain other movies. Because everything started revolving around my feeling comfortable in my gay identity. I wanted to feel good about it. I wanted to get the message out that, it's okay to be gay.
Through his involvement with Community United Against Violence in San Francisco, he was filmed telling his coming out experiences before public school students in the film, It's Elementary. Noe has mixed feelings about his presence on this film.
The thing that that I don't necessarily agree with in It's Elementary is it should be safe for a kid, a young boy or a young girl, to be different. It should be safe for them to not fit into the typical stereotypes of what a young boy or girl might be. I don't equate being different in that expression to being gay. I don't think they're the same. I was filmed speaking before a group of young people. The one close-up I have in the film, I remember this so clearly, I argue that there are already gay kids in the schools. I believe that there are young children who have conflict, have internal conflict, much like I did. My mistake in that clip is that I named them. I named them. I didn't give them a chance to name themselves. I didn't give them an opportunity to discover their identity. I named them. I said, there are gay students in this school. What gives me the right to do that? What gives me the right to name them?
Many who are no longer gay found that they were dissatisfied living as gay-identified people.
We asked all of them what was the most important reason, and many gave several reasons, and then we made it after listening to them, we made a list of the most common so we have some notion of the frequency. For many, it was they wanted to stay married or get married. For many, it was a religious conflict. They felt that the religious values conflicted with homosexuality. Many of them were unhappy with what they perceived was a gay lifestyle, promiscuity that they had felt was associated with being gay.
To some, it may come as a surprise that there can be choices about their personal identity. For those we spoke to, the dissatisfaction prompted a desire for a new direction in life consistent with their values and personal beliefs.
Well, you can change it. I changed. And so that's my view. It's a personal experience for me. And I've seen it happen with many others who have chose to change. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. It certainly wasn't. There's a lot of emotion involved here and all that goes with it. But I know that people can change. I've seen it happen. I've done it. And the reason I was miserable where I was at, I wanted to change. I wanted to get out of that lifestyle. And so I sought help. I was the one that went seeking. Not somebody, beating the doors down, Bible thumping me, not at all. I was the one that was looking for a way out.
But then what happens is when they're 40, 42, 44, now they're at the end of the bar, smoking their cigarette and drinking their drink, and no one's paying attention to them anymore. They're now the old guy. And all of a sudden they say, why did I waste my life? And so we get a number of guys who come into us in their 40s or in their 50s who used to have baby faces and now have aged and say, this doesn't work for me.
That I firmly believe that homosexuality is a choice, and it may not feel like a choice. To me, it never felt like a choice. But looking back and realizing what was the engine driving my choices or my feelings, it was a heart that was choosing a certain way.
When I was 24, I came to a point where it had been many years since my coming out of the closet. 8 years, I guess. I came out when I was 16, I was 24. I'd moved to San Francisco. I had been in several relationships. I was at the time in a committed relationship with another man. We were on our 3rd year together, lived together. I was as integrated into the gay community as I could be. And what I found for me was that it wasn't enough. And I thought it would be. I felt empty. I felt like dissatisfied, disillusioned.
According to those who told their experience, change was not quick or easy. They also say it is not the same for everyone.
Well, at that point, at 24, I started again. I decided, okay, well, this isn't enough. What is then? What is enough? I took a harder look at the roots of my decisions and my decision to become gay identified.
I thought at the end of that relationship, after 8 years, I thought I had changed. I did all the things that my pastor told me to do, and I had a female mentor at the time, and I got back involved in church and a Christian organization on campus at college, and memorized the verses, read the books, changed my friends, all the above. But it wasn't even a whole year did I meet somebody else at a Christian sports camp. And the second I saw her, I knew I was going to fall. It was like I was watching myself and I couldn't get off the train that I was on. And I ended up falling with her, and that relationship lasted 2 years. That was devastating for me because I thought I had changed, and through that relationship, I realized that behavior change does not change my heart and doesn't change my orientations. That's just behavior, it's just a shell.
My whole identity had been swallowed up in my gay identity, honestly. So when I started realizing healing in my sexuality, I was at a loss for a clear reflection of who this new person was. You know, when I saw myself, I thought, oh, what is going on here? And there are words in the Bible that specifically speak to who we are to God, how beloved we are, how purposeful we are, what our purpose is in life. When someone's looking at redefining themselves and looking for change in their lives, there's a lot of tearing down that needs to happen, and there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen. And I can't think of a better foundation than the Word of God and what it has to say about who you are.
Well, I needed to renew my mind. I'd certainly filled it with a lot of stuff. Contrary to what the homosexual politicos will tell you, homosexuality is very much based on sex, particularly with the men. After a while, it leaves you pretty shallow, leaves you pretty empty, especially once you're really looking for something substantive, something lasting. And that was never true in homosexuality. I still haven't found it true. I still have homosexual friends, and many of them are infected, and some continue to pass away.
I really had that deep down inside that heterosexuality hurt women. It was for the service of men, and that it hurt women. And so when I discovered my own attractions towards females, I think it was hard. I think it was hard for me to stop judging men like I had for most of my life. Stop judging them for what I'd heard from women, which is men only want one thing. And I had to set all those aside and say, hey, I'm a man, and I'm not abusive, and I don't just want one thing, and I accept other men, whether or not they fit into my idea of what masculinity is. And I'm a man. I have that power. I can belong. That, to me, was the door. You know, that swung open a safety for me to accept and to look into my own attractions towards women. And when I started looking at that and opening myself up to that, I discovered my own heterosexuality. I discovered that I had heterosexual feelings.
Just the decision, I had made the decision that I was not going to ever be in that lifestyle again. But it is a process to change. Like my husband said, you know, the more you grow in the Lord, the more that you apply the Word of God to your life, and the more your relationship with Jesus is strengthened. He changes you.
Every single person who is gay identified has a completely different story. There might be similarities, but they're different people in different parts of the world, and they've got different stories. They arrive there differently. So I don't think that it's safe to expect to arrive at change the same way.
Some critics say that all former gays and lesbians continue to have struggles with same-sex attraction. The people we talk to dispute that idea as overly simplistic.
No, I do not have sexual attraction to women anymore. Issue with me was that I sexualized admiration of women, and I've learned that admiration and attraction are two different things, and part of my change process was learning the difference between the two, and learning that you can admire friends and you don't have to sexualize them. And admiration isn't attraction, isn't a sexual attraction.
It was a process of being over that. You don't spend that much time in your life and fill it with all that junk. This is one thing I have noticed, especially in evangelical circles. When you are born again and blood washed, you were not brainwashed. History was not erased. All that stuff I put in my head is still there. All I have to do is go down the road somewhere and I'm looking for a Christian radio station. Got Seek and Scan on the radio. And all of a sudden, here's that song that comes back, and I'm back in the disco. With the Bee Gees doing the John Travolta thing. That memory is there. You're taken right back to it. It's as if, wow, I can remember all the stuff. And it's what you do and how you control. I've made a decision. I've made a choice that I'm not going to go back to that behavior. I'm choosing a new direction. And also, too, through prayer, through developing a relationship with Jesus Christ, then I understand what He meant for me to do, for what He meant for me to be. And in that process, I have changed, I have overcome, and I'm now married.
I definitely was homosexual, and now I am definitely free and have been for 46 years.
I never would have thought this, but I've discovered that I am exclusively attracted to women sexually.
It feels very natural to be sexually attracted to men. And women, I feel like my relationships with them have been very restored, and my view of women has been restored. So the sexual attraction arena of looking at women isn't part of my worldview or my view any longer.
Many gay-identified people feel great support from their religious faith and personal values.
A lot of people that I work with are Christians, or otherwise they're conservative religious people, often Christians. And so they take their experiences of same-sex attraction, the thing that they're coping with or that they feel like they're contending with, and they try to make meaning out of that in light of global meanings. What's God's intention for me, given that I experience these attractions?
Part of the problem, too, and I say this and I want it said, is that the church was part of the problem because they had no help for someone like me. And there was the fear of shame and the fear of guilt. And if I felt like I could have comfortably gone to a minister or a pastor and said, even with this issue, that there's something wrong with me, that I've got these desires and attraction, and they could have gotten me help, spiritual help, emotional counseling, psychological counseling, that would have been much better. But what I wound up doing was going to a Christian counselor. It said Agape Christian Counseling Center on the door. And the counselor said, Greg, we can deal with the abuse, we can deal with the anger, but I don't know about the homosexual feelings. There's no hope. That's exactly what I was told. Well, being absolutely devastated and then completely confused, because what I was reading in the Word was not what I was hearing from this man who was supposed to be a born-again Christian counselor. Finally, the confusion, the emotion, the pain of it all, I came out of the closet and went to a gay bar and started 9 years in the homosexual lifestyle, out.
For many formerly gay-identified people, spiritual resources are key factors in helping them to develop a new identity. Accordingly, churches and ministers have a special role in helping those who renounce a gay identity.
I think hearing the stories that one could change their orientation or sexual feelings was very hopeful to me, and I never doubted it.
No one was born gay, no one. Homosexuality is an acquired behavior, and as I've been trying to say and communicate for a long time, we make a lot of choices, and we can choose to change, and some of the choices you make in ignorance, because you don't know any better. The church needs to be the salt and light. We need to be the ones giving, look, there is another way, and there's another option, and this option is success. This will work for you because it's exactly what you were meant to be. It's what you were created to do.
Those people we spoke with believe religious and public educational settings could be more helpful by providing a wider range of information.
I also didn't have a choice of what materials or what ideas were presented to me at school. So, my educators didn't present to me a picture of the possibility of change.
I would like to see more resources available to teachers, to parents, to teens that really give them other options so that they can see these things in a different way that's maybe consistent with their own beliefs and values. The resources that I would look at would be resources that make a distinction between attractions, orientation, and identity, that realize we're talking not about the population of gay youth, we're talking about a population of teens who experience same-sex attraction. Among them, some will integrate those attractions into a gay or lesbian identity. Others will not. But if those others don't realize that there are other options, then they may foreclose prematurely on other ways to go and just go with what is available to them in terms of role models, media influence, school sex education curriculum. These things will have an impact on people.
Well, you can change it. I changed. And so that's my view. It's a personal experience for me. And I've seen it happen with many others.
The sexual attraction arena of looking at women isn't part of my worldview or my view any longer.
Just the decision, I had made the decision that I was not going to ever be in that lifestyle again.
I definitely have no feelings for the same sex. I haven't for 46 years.
So yes, I do believe change is possible, but I think it starts with the person. I think it really starts with a personal choice and an openness towards change.
You are